Leslie.
Hi, my name is Leslie Billy. My maiden name is Leslie Yesenia Garcia Billy. I go by YG, which stands for Yesenia Garcia. I was born on the Seminole Indian Reservation, not too far from there in Clewiston, Florida, in 1972. My mother's full-blooded Seminole, and she married a Mexican, so I'm a half-breed. I was referred to half-breed majority of my life living on the reservation of Big Cypress. My dad was considered a wetback. He came from Mexico. He illegally escaped Mexico as an alien, and he didn't have no papers. His source of income came from being an immigrant worker in agriculture, which surrounds our reservation. Majority of land that was on the reservation consisted of agriculture and cattle. So our means and ways of income came from agriculture. And my mother was a seamstress at heart. As a professional, she sold native clothing and made a living. My grandmother is Miss Tommy Roberts Jumper. We live in a matriarch society. My clan is Panther. I am currently 50 years old. I was born in 1972. As I recall, my parents had a dysfunctional relationship. My mother struggled with alcoholism. We back then were raised in a camp in a village. My grandmother was sober. She spoke all Miccosukee. She did not speak English. She taught me my language, and I thank God today that my mother didn't play a big role in my raising up, because I believe that without my grandmother's upbringing, I would not know as much of my culture, my tradition, and my language. And I never realized that we were poor until I went to middle school, which was in the county of Hendry County, and that's when I found out that we were different. We were poverty stricken. I didn't know that until I encountered the white society, the black society, that I was different. And even through school, riding on the bus, I was bullied. I was called Mexican bean eaters, taco eaters, so forth. Trying to manipulate my mind. And I was hurt, but I still continued to strive. I was raised on the reservation, attended the Head Start school, went to Head Start, entered into the native school in Big Cypress, which is called Afachki. I attended there from kindergarten to fifth grade. At sixth grade, we had to transition to a public school, which was Hendry County in Clewiston. And then that's where a lot of the bullying and things took place in my past. I didn't realize we were dysfunctional. My mother had 6 kids, 3 of the older children. They were juvenile delinquents. They were in the foster care, alternative schools, foster homes, and so forth. My mother had 6 kids. There was 3 of us. I have a twin brother and a sister that's 10 months older than me. For some reason, we weren't sent off and involved with foster care or so forth, because again, my grandmother played a big role in raising us. So basically, my older sister back in the 80s, maybe about 15, got involved in cigarettes, alcohol, and marijuana. Later, in the 80s, they experimented with crack. She had 2 crack babies that at 10 years old, I was raising 2 crack babies because they weren't released from the hospital due to them being addicted babies. They were released to my mother. At this time, our dividend, which we call our source of income through the tribal gaming revenues, was $50. And then I remember my mom removing us from the camp where my grandmother was raised. And at that time, I didn't realize it was solely because of the dividends. And I was raised as a live-in babysitter and house cleaner. And I enjoyed doing it, but I didn't know I was being taken advantage of. By this time, I was 13 or 14. We moved back to the reservation. I was being influenced by other people with dysfunctional affairs going on, and I got involved with a man that was married. He happened to be the chief of the tribe. I was 15. He was 44. He was married. That was basically my first love. She left him. She had 2 children. That was 7 and 5, and left the children with the husband. And later, I moved in with the husband to raise the 2 kids. And then later, took on the 2 crack babies that was my nephews that I raised. So most of my young years, I was raising kids at an early age. He was very promiscuous. When I say that, he had a lot of extramarital affairs. Mentally, I was bothered. Mentally broke me down. I thought about suicide. I thought there was something wrong with me. But later on, through years of therapy, recently, I found out it wasn't me. It was his bullshit. And he engaged in having an affair with my own sister, had a love child. She blamed the child on 3 different men. And apparently my husband happened to be the father of the child. So shame on you. Shame on you, James. Shame on you, Virginia. But that's what happened, and that's what I'm sticking to. I hung on. I had 3 sons with my ex-husband. But during the last son of my pregnancy, he was living a double life on me. And I couldn't stay no more. I couldn't hang on no more. As being Native American, we did not seek or consider mental health being an issue. We didn't trust white man. And so that was one of the things that we grew up with, not trusting and opening up to a white man to discuss internal affairs. I was pregnant with my 3rd son. She was pregnant with their first son. I had an altercation with him, and when we went to court, I was the last person to realize she was pregnant. And so I couldn't take it anymore. I decided to leave the marriage. We separated, and I hooked up with another tribal member who was Bird Clan. He's from Fort Pierce. We had 2 kids together. But prior to that, I was not aware that he was an alcoholic. So immediately I picked up drinking at 30 during our separation. That was my first encounter with drugs and alcohol. He was very jealous, very insecure, very controlling. I tend to be very dominant. I'm a very independent, liberated woman. I could not continue to live my life with someone with bipolar, and denying that they had mental issues. So I decided to move back to the res by then I had my 3 sons and my daughter. We had a daughter together. And that was the wrong thing to do, was to move back to the reservation. My addiction, being introduced to experimenting with cocaine at 35. When I met cocaine, I ran to the races, and I continued to have an income. My source of income was based on my dividends. I had 4 kids plus my dividend. So I managed to stay above water by paying our bills, but I used a lot of the income on materialistic things. I had 10 cars in my driveway, candy paint, rims, Pirellis, rims and tires, 28-inch. Like, culture got to me. The hip hop culture, the rap music. I was just exposed to a lot of things quickly when I turned 30. Alcohol, then cocaine. Then at 40, I went back to the reservation trying to leave this man that was from Fort Pierce. I believe he emotionally, physically, and mentally abused me. I was running. I didn't know I was a runner. At 40, I got introduced to Xanax and Percocet. I had injuries due to ACL tears in both knees, one from basketball, one from skiing. So I got addicted to painkillers. And then Xanax to calm my nerve because I was suffering from depression. And when I went in to talk to my doctor, he immediately gave me Xanax and Zoloft. And I never knew what Xanax was until then. But I was drinking on top of the consumption of taking my medication. So I immediately became addicted to everything I was exposing myself to. I lost my kids. My family interfered. They called DCF on me. They removed my kids from me, Marchman Act me for treatment. But I've been in and out of rehab and addiction for 20 years without my kids. One thing that I regret the fact as I Marchman Act my son, but I followed through by helping him get his clothes that he needed, stayed in, aftercare and so forth. And I felt that they may have been trying to help me, but they didn't follow through. You just don't call a family member and put them away and not follow through with therapy. I had no clothes on my back when I got picked up. I was clothesless. I didn't have necessities. My last run was 2 years ago. I had my 4th DUI. It was a stiff sentence. I sold drugs. I sold crack. I sold anything that can make $1. I was getting high, even though I didn't need to. The lifestyle was what I was getting adrenaline from. Like the lifestyle, I like the pop culture, the rap music, the status. But I grew out of that stage today. I think solely in the last 2 years, I was incarcerated for my 4th DUI. I had a stiff sentence. I was looking at prison time. I scored high. I had a trafficking ticket from Port St. Lucie. Back to my current status with the 4th DUI, I got caught DUI and Kindle. And in my background, it still says I went to prison. So I was put in the high profile where there was murderers, rapists, all kinds of people, and I believe God had a plan for me. I was a trustee while I was incarcerated for 6 months in Miami and Dade County. I was in TGK and Metro West Detention Center. And I served as a trustee for an extra bologna sandwich. And It showed me humility and integrity. While I was incarcerated, I had a spiritual awakening. God spoke to me, and through the word, the book of the Bible, there was a lot of scriptures. I can't recall the scriptures, but he told me to build my faith and believe in him, that there was a power greater than myself. And that connection, I still have that connection today. My mother died while I was incarcerated, so I didn't attend her funeral. She was one of my biggest enablers. She was one of my biggest supporters. I love my mom to death, but I made peace with God when she died, that, I thank you, God, for giving my mother the life she gave me and the relationship we had, that I was thankful. I didn't go all crazy, mad at the Lord. I was just thankful. I was released 6 months of in residential treatment, 8 weeks of IOP.
And who was that? What was that recommendation from?
From the prosecutors told the judge. So my lawyer decided, and one of the stiffest sentence was being under 2 monitors on my ankle. One was for alcohol and one was for house arrest.
Now,
So
is that something they normally do?
they can do it, and they did to me.
Okay, did they say that was like a rare case though? They normally, it's not something that's like...
Because of the fact that I was, my points was based on going to prison, my sentence was stiff. I'm not the first one it happened to, so it's not real common, but it is common that it does happen. So I had an alcohol blood level bracelet on one ankle, and then I had a house arrest bracelet for 2 years. I just got off in November. I had community control. I had to check in once a week with itinerary, and by the grace of God, I made it through. And one thing that I like to express to everyone who struggles with alcohol and addiction, drugs, shop addiction, cross addiction, any kind of addiction, you do need to seek therapy. Therapy helped me in the 2 years that I've been sober. It helped me mentally and emotionally. It helped because addiction is only a Band-Aid. It's only covering something you don't know what the core problem is until you get treatment with a mental therapist. And make sure you interview your therapist and make sure you have goals that you're working on. And without therapy, I don't think I would have made it this far. I found out who I really am. Second thing was, during my 20 years of addiction, I was soulless. I had no spirituality. I found spirituality incarcerated. I believed in a power greater than myself. And with mental help, with mental therapy, I combined that with my NA and AA recovery. I developed spiritual principles, morals, values, studying the 7 sins, and I have standards today. And I've overcome, but I struggle with addiction one day at a time. I don't like to get complacent. I have a sponsor. Her name is Janice. She was a lifer. She was paroled after 20 years. She violated parole twice, but because of her consistency and her commitment to NA, she's a living legend to me, and she knows her literature back and forth. She made it through with therapy. Her doctor is my doctor, which she worked with for 15 years to, I guess, come back to society. I surrounded myself with winners. If I choose to surround myself with losers, they bring me down. I believe in high vibration. I believe in the frequency. My whole world have changed due to being strict. The system showed me discipline, showed me structure, showed me how to live day by day, making commitments, service, having a family. I mean, not a family, but
Structure.
structure mainly. But I'm a member of a church that I go to twice a week, and spirituality and mental health is the key to sobriety to stay long term. And that's what I'd like to share with everyone, to seek mental health. Mental health therapy does work.
So what do you feel like right now in the culture of the younger people? Like, do you feel drugs is being an impact on younger people within the culture?
I believe that money is it's very available to people to utilize that. And I think that they've lost a lot of their old ways, traditions, culture, language, and they deal with boredom. And spending, for me, one of my cross addictions was, when I'm bored, I shop on Amazon, but I don't gamble. And, it's a number of things. I'm not really close to the community right now. I live in Miramar. I'm a full-time student. So part of my upbringing and my new recovery of life, I celebrate life every day. My mom, the spirit of my mom lives with me. I have ancestors, spirituality working for me, and that's what I focus on and believe in. And I believe in my meditation, my prayer, and devotion on a daily basis.
So today, where does life go from here right now?
I have goals, short-term and long-term goals. I'm furthering my education to move to Santa Fe to transfer. I bought a home there. I closed on it, but I never moved. My heart always been in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And yesterday I transferred my transcripts, and I'm moving possibly in June. And I want to come back and work as a board member, because I believe anyone who works for the tribe on the tribal council or board should have some type of education behind them.
So if you was to give some advice to someone right now that's going through a hardship or a challenge similar to your life story, your journey, what would you say?
I would tell them to stay open-minded. Don't stay quiet. Reach out. There's a lot of help available. A lot of people cannot handle loneliness, and people have trust issues when it comes to addiction. But sometimes you got to pray about it and speak out and reach out to someone who's in recovery, who can help you. And I believe that everything's you can conquer.